As he was about to leave, he heard a familiar voice. Nick, what are you doing here? Nick turned around and saw Esther standing there, holding a leash with a small scruffy dog on the other hand. Nick was surprised. He had never pegged Esther as the type to care about animals. I could ask you the same thing, Nick said. Nick Martinez was a 28-year-old firstborn who lived in a small apartment in Los Angeles with his loyal dog, Warrior. Nick was the kind of guy who liked things to go his way. He was organized, punctual, and always had a plan. But life, as he often found out, had a way of throwing curveballs at him. And the biggest curveball of all, his neighbor and co-worker, Esther. Esther was everything Nick wasn't. She was spontaneous, carefree, and always seemed to be one step ahead of him at work. She had a knack for making him look bad in front of their boss, Mr. Thompson, and she did it with a smile on her face. Nick couldn't stand her, or at least that's what he told himself. Warrior, Nick's golden retriever, was his only solace. Warrior was always there for him, wagging his tail and licking his face whenever Nick came home frustrated after a long day at work. Warrior was the one constant in Nick's life, and he loved him more than anything. But even Warrior couldn't help Nick with the problem that was Esther. Nick and Esther worked at a marketing firm in downtown Los Angeles. Nick had been there for 5 years and Esther had joined just 6 months ago. In that short time, she had managed to become the star of the office. She was always coming up with brilliant ideas that impressed Mr. Thompson. And she had a way of making everyone laugh, even Nick, though he would never admit it. One day, Mr. Thompson called Nick into his office. Nick, I need you to work with Esther on the new campaign for the tech startup. I think the two of you could come up with something great together. Nick's heart sank. Working with Esther? That was the last thing he wanted to do. But he couldn't say no to Mr. Thompson, so he reluctantly agreed. The first meeting with Esther was a disaster. She was late, as usual, and when she finally showed up, she had a latte in one hand and a donut in the other. Sorry I'm late, she said with a grin. Traffic was a nightmare. Nick rolled his eyes. We have a lot of work to do, Esther. Can we please focus? Esther shrugged. Relax, Nick. We've got this. But Nick couldn't relax. He was too busy trying to come up with ideas that would impress Mr. Thompson and show Esther that he was the better marketer. But no matter what he suggested, Esther always had a better idea. The tension between Nick and Esther reached its peak during a presentation to the tech startup. Nick had spent hours preparing his part of the presentation, and he was confident that he was going to blow everyone away. But when it was his turn to speak, Esther interrupted him. Actually, she said, I think we should go in a different direction. Nick was furious. What are you talking about? This is the direction we agreed on. Esther smiled. I know, but I had a better idea last night. Trust me, it's going to be amazing. Nick couldn't believe it. She was undermining him in front of their clients, but before he could say anything, Mr. Thompson chimed in. Let's hear what Esther has to say. Nick sat there, fuming, as Esther presented her idea. And to make matters worse, the client loved it. After the meeting, Nick stormed out of the conference room. He couldn't take it anymore. Esther was always one-upping him, and he was tired of it. He needed to get away from her, even if it was just for a while. Nick decided to take Warrior for a long walk along the beach in Santa Monica. The salty air and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore always helped clear his mind. As he walked, he thought about everything that had happened at work. He couldn't understand why Esther seemed to enjoy making his life so difficult. Warrior, sensing Nick's frustration, nudged his hand with his nose. Nick smiled and scratched Warrior behind the ears. "You're the only one who gets me, buddy," he said. But as they continued walking, Nick noticed something strange. Warrior kept pulling him towards a group of people that gathered near the pair. Curious, Nick followed. When they got closer, Nick realized that it was a dog adoption event. There were dozens of dogs in cages, all looking for homes. Nick's heart broke as he saw the sad eyes of the dogs. He wanted to take them all home, but he knew he couldn't. As he was about to leave, he heard a familiar voice. "Nick, what are you doing here?" Nick turned around and saw Esther standing there, holding a leash with a small scruffy dog on the other hand. Nick was surprised. He had never pegged Esther as the type to care about animals. "I could ask you the same thing," Nick said, trying to hide his annoyance. Esther smiled. "I volunteer here on the weekends. I love dogs, and I want to help as many as I can find homes." Nick was taken aback. He had never seen this side of Esther before. She seemed genuine. But before he could say anything, Warrior started barking at the scruffy dog. Esther laughed. "Looks like they want to be friends." Nick couldn't help but smile. Maybe Esther wasn't so bad after all. Over the next few weeks, Nick and Esther started spending more time together outside of work. They would take their dogs to the park, go for walks along the beach, and they would grab coffee together. Nick found himself actually enjoying Esther's company. She was funny, kind, and had a way of making him see the bright side of things. But there was still one thing that bothered him. Why had she been so difficult to work with at the office? One day, as they were sitting on the beach watching the sunset, Nick decided to ask her, "Esther, can I ask you something?" Esther turned to him. "Of course." "Why do you always seem to go out of your way to make me look bad at work?" Esther looked surprised. "What are you talking about, Nick? I don't try to make you look bad." "Yes, you do," Nick said, his frustration bubbling up again. "You're always coming up with better ideas, interrupting me in meetings, and making me look like an idiot in front of Mr. Thompson." Esther sighed. "Nick, I'm not trying to make you look bad. I guess I've always been a little intimidated by you." Nick was shocked. "Intimidated by me? Why?" "Because you're so good at what you do," Esther said. "You're always so prepared and you know exactly what you're doing. I guess I I just wanted to prove that I could keep up with you. Nick couldn't believe what he was hearing. All this time, he had thought Esther was trying to make him look bad, but in reality, she was just trying to impress him. Esther, I'm sorry, Nick said. I had no idea. Esther smiled. It's okay. I'm sorry too. I should have been more upfront with you. Nick felt a weight lift up his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe. And as he looked at Esther, he realized something else. He had feelings for her. The next day at work, Nick decided to make things right. He went to Esther's desk and handed her a cup of coffee. I got this for you, he said, as a peace offering. Esther smiled. Thanks, Nick. That's so sweet of you. Nick took a deep breath. Esther, I just want to say that I'm sorry for how I've been acting. I've been so confused on trying to be the best that I didn't realize how much I was pushing you away. I hope we can start over. Esther's eyes softened. I'd like that, Nick. From that day on, Nick and Esther became a team. They worked together on projects, supported each other, and even started hanging out outside of work. And as they spent more time together, their feelings for each other grew. One evening, after a long day at work, Nick and Esther decided to take their dogs to Griffith Park for a hike. As they reached the top of the trail, they stopped to take in the view of the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over Los Angeles. Nick turned to Esther. Esther, there's something I need to tell you. Esther looked at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. What is it? Nick took a deep breath. I've been feeling something for you for a while now, and I can't keep it to myself anymore. I think I've fallen in love with you. Esther's eyes filled with tears. Nick, I feel the same way. I've been trying to hide it because I didn't want to ruin our friendship, but I can't deny it anymore. I love you too. Nick's heart soared. He reached out and took Esther's hand in his. I'm so glad you feel the same way. As they stood there, hand in hand, watching the sunset over the city, Nick realized that sometimes the things that frustrate us the most are the things that lead us to the greatest happiness. Nick and Esther's relationship blossomed over the next few months. They became inseparable, both at work and at home. Warrior and Esther's dog, Scruffy, became best friends, and the four of them spent their weekends exploring LA together. Nick learned to let go of his need for control and to embrace the spontaneity that Esther brought into his life. And Esther, she learned to appreciate Nick's organization and planning, which helped her stay on track at work. 1 year later, Nick proposed to Esther on the same beach where they had first started to get to know each other. She said yes, and they celebrated with a small, intimate wedding surrounded by their friends, family, and of course, their dogs. Now, what are the life lessons from the story? 1. Don't judge too quickly. Nick initially judged Esther as his rival, but later discovered she was just trying to impress him. Sometimes people's actions are misunderstood, and it's important to give them a chance. Number 2, communication is key. Nick and Esther's relationship improved when they finally communicated openly about their feelings and frustrations. Honest conversations can resolve misunderstandings and strengthen relationships. Number 3, embrace differences. Nick and Esther were opposites in many ways, but their differences complemented each other. Learning to appreciate and embrace differences can lead to personal growth and stronger connections. 4, let go of control. Nick's need for control caused him unnecessary stress. Learning to let go and go with the flow can many times lead to unexpected happiness. Number 5, love can come from unexpected places. Nick never expected to fall in love with Esther, but their journey showed that love can blossom in the most unexpected ways. 6, be kind to animals. Warrior and Scruffy played a big role in bringing Nick and Esther together. Being kind to animals can bring joy and unexpected blessings into your life. We have to give it that dogs are amazing. No wonder they are called man best friends. See you in the next one.